Holy moly, today's episode's a good one. Did you know that you could label products while watching Breaking Bad and build a massively successful company? I didn't know either, but Bethany talks about it today. The biggest Black Friday disaster that she's ever had, how to fix it. She keeps a running list of mistakes that have happened in building a massively successful e-commerce brand with the best ingredients and the highest priced products that she will not bow on. And she went from labels with Breaking Bad to running a team of 40, and she spends most of her time writing blogs and thinking about customer experiences. And I also learned that I can actually train someone to be just as OCD as me, if not better. And the final one, do your employees operate with the smell test? That's what we cover in today's episode, and I'm going to tell you this is for every single entrepreneur, no matter where you are in your business, physical product, digital product. I'm not going to taint it anymore. Let's cue the intro, and let's get into the show. And welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And today I am joined by a very special guest, somebody who I know, whose family I know, who has done everything from being on a farm, feeding me chicken, to being the person responsible for me relaxing in a flower bath to help de-stress as an entrepreneur after all my amazing days of work and everything else. But I'm joined by somebody that I call a friend, somebody I respect, somebody who I watch pursue her passion and somehow make it look perfect, make it look easy from the outside, and absolutely crush. So today we have Bethany Mcdaniel, and she has a story that I can't wait for her to share, and I won't do it any justice. So Bethany, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, George. That was quite the intro. It's so great to talk to you. You've always been such a huge support to me and my family. So really appreciate all the support you've given us over the years.
Yeah, you guys are like the modern day every amazing family mixed together from like everyone that I've seen in history, and I love it. You guys are close, you work together, and I swear that like every time I turn, you guys are innovating on a new path that I was like, they would be the ones, because I couldn't do that. And I just like to be along for the ride. I'm like, just leave me a seat in the trailer. I'm coming with you. Coming with you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, and I mean it too. The amount of like design and beauty and like intentionality in everything that all of you do just makes my heart happy. And I use you guys as examples all the time, but it's actually perfect because my first question, and I ask all my guests this because this is what I love about entrepreneurship. When you look back at like, oh, I started a farm, I started eating healthy, I realized the importance of quality ingredients. I'm going to go start one of the most beautiful, best skincare, organic, quality ingredient companies ever. And you fast forward, when you look back at that, what was the biggest mistake that you made, and what did you learn about it?
Oh my goodness. So many mistakes over the years. And I actually keep a list of all of the mistakes and things that have gone wrong, because in the moment it always feels like, okay, this is it. Like things are done. Like there's no coming back from this. And then, you always do. And then you get to that next thing and you feel like then like things are over in that moment. So I keep a list, and then I look back whenever I'm feeling that way, like, okay, all of these things happened and we're still in a good place. We're still, in business. So this is no different, this thing that I'm going through now. But gosh, to answer your question, the biggest mistake, I think the area that I definitely look back on as like me needing way more experience in, and the thing that like led to so many of the mistakes, I guess, like from a few years ago, was just having no experience in business or managing people and not like investing in learning. Yeah. So I was so head down for the first couple of years that I wasn't listening to podcasts like this one. I wasn't reading books. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. And I was just feeling like constantly overwhelmed by, how like learning how to manage people and just all the things that business. I started out thinking, I'm just going to make these amazing products and, interact with our customers, and it's going to be so fun. I didn't think about like all of the behind the scenes stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had no background in any of that. I was a low-level employee at Lululemon, and then I was working at Special Olympics, and like I had never managed a person in my life, and now I have a team of 40 people under me. And so there was a huge learning curve, and I wish I had invested sooner in like learning and educating myself and finding a mentor and things like that.
Yeah, that is such a valid answer to that question. And I think most of the entrepreneurs I know, myself included, learned that lesson. Like this year, actually, like COVID was a big eye opener in the state of the world. And I went from one coach to nine in the matter of
Wow.
like 90 days. And it's probably been the absolute best thing that I've ever done. And I was like, it never stops learning. And so now, two
Yeah.
things that you said that I think are really important. And one of them is perspective. So you basically keep this running list of like things that felt like 911, my life is over, the business is gone. So you kind of have like this plug-in to look back when it comes up again, right? And so I'm
Yep.
assuming it comes up again. You're like, okay, wait, we've been here before. Let's hit the pause button. Let's figure out what's really going on and getting you out of the weeds of what's there. That's actually I've never heard anybody say that, and I think that that's a really, really good tool to keep a list running of that. And so you've made some. I have so many questions because I know your business from the outside and know you a little bit, and like I really believe that what you've done is so absolutely amazing. But when you think about that now, like looking at the future as an entrepreneur, like it doesn't matter where we are. Like there's this spot in our business or in our world where like that's our sweet spot. Like what's your sweet spot in the company? Like when you look at it, like what are the big things that only you do that you're like every time it comes up, I do this, I do this, I do this. Like what is that role for you in the business?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's something that it's easy to lose sight of that and to get caught up in so many other things that are outside of like that sweet spot that you talked about. So this will be good for me to like kind of think through as we're talking and try to like get back into that place. Especially right now around the holidays, I feel like I'm just being pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah.
But I think anything consumer facing is like I love to be involved in. So anything from like the content that we put out there. Um, I've recently taken the initiative to get more active on our blog and like write more blog posts myself. I was really relying on my team to do that for a while, and I just missed it. I think it's fun to interact with our community, and I also think it's helpful for me sometimes to look at things and like reflect and learn more about the ingredients we use or any given topic. It's just fun for me to do, so I love doing that. I love like hopping on stories and chatting with our audience about new product launches or all kinds of random stuff. That's really fun for me. The products, of course, I'm really involved in that, the product creation process. Up until early 2020, I was still formulating everything myself. And then in, I think, January or February of this year, we brought on an herbalist who's a natural product formulator to really take charge of that. But I'm still working super closely with her on all of that stuff. So yeah, I
I
think that would be it, like the products, the content, and all the design stuff as well that we do.
Yeah, and I mean if you guys listening want to see in my opinion what like brand perfection and congruency looks like, go to her website. It's primallypure.com. I mean it. Like it's like the Apple aesthetic of like the best products ever. And you do
Oh, thanks.
amazing. And so when you say like, one of the biggest mistakes is like trying to do it all yourself and like really just kind of like blinders on, head down, I'm going to figure this out. I feel like that's probably the default a lot of time. Like I can imagine like hiring your first like herbalist or product manufacturer came from head down and then getting up. So what's your process like where you're like, okay, I think I can figure this out on my own. I'm going to figure this out on my own, or I'm aware that I probably need to bring in some external support. Like, do you go through a process for that? Or like, how do you identify like where to put your head down or where to be like, okay, like life card, like I need help, somebody jump in. Like, what's that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I could use more of a process for that, but I do try to like evaluate just things on a regular basis. So I have a planner every day. It asks me, it's the Brendan Burchard
Yep.
planner. So every day at the end of the day, it asks like a series of questions and I kind of go through those. And then on a weekly basis, I try to kind of like look back at my notes for the week and Like, what was I saying each day that I needed help with, or that didn't go well that day? Like, what were those things, and how can I fix those? And sometimes it's like, okay, I need to go to bed earlier so I have extra time in the morning to work on those things. Or sometimes it's, yeah, I could really use like some help, some outside help in this area. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, so it sounds like just being aware, like just
Yeah,
really understanding like where your time goes and then looking at it like, do I really want to keep doing this thing? Is this that blogging,
totally.
writing, product designer? Is this one of those kind of soul sucking? This is not going to help my customers and get there and
Yes,
get help. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Now, what I think is so interesting about your story, right? Like, I talk to thousands of entrepreneurs who are like, I want to launch a product. I want to launch a supplement. I want to launch a skincare company. And the first thing they do is like, who can manufacture my product for me? And you're like,
Yeah.
how do we manufacture our own product? Like
Yeah.
in my backyard.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that that has come with kind of its own unique sets of challenges,
Yeah.
but also has some like serious reward because you guys as a family, like Primal Pastures, by the way, is the farm. You guys have that running out of Myriad. I'm like, we have chicken farms and up the street from me, and then obviously you guys are friends, and you're like, I'm going a mile down the road. And not only are we going to do this, we're going to create our own products, manufacture them, build the team to build them, make them in-house, formulate them, package them, ship them, and like own the entire experience. And I look at you and I was like, you're amazing. And that probably was the hardest, most resistant road that you could go down. And so what has that been like for you? Like, what have you done? How did you get to that point? Why was that the decision? Like, what was your process into that? And like, how did you go about that?
Yeah. In the beginning, it kind of just happened by default. So in the very early stages, like I was doing all the manufacturing myself in my kitchen. I was shipping products out of like the room that was going to be my daughter's nursery. I was like labeling products in the living room. I remember like watching Breaking Bad, like going on a Breaking Bad binge because I had never seen it before. And I just like watched all the seasons at once, and I had all this labeling to do. And I was just like labeling products, watching Breaking Bad. So it was nuts. It was like all, I was a one woman show for a long time. And so I had so much ownership of every step of the process. I couldn't imagine anyone else ever making my products. So I remember when my husband, Jeff, was like, hey, like you've been up till 1 a.m. the past 4 nights making deodorant. Like, do you think you could maybe like hire someone to do that? Because like, you're making decent sales, you're doing pretty well. Like you could probably hire someone to make the product. And I thought he was crazy. Like I thought, no way, I'm never letting anyone else touch the products other than me. Like no one could do as good of a job as me to make them, which of course like wasn't true. And I was probably also not doing the best job because I was, running myself into the ground. But once I did hand that part of the process off, there was a lot of freedom for me in realizing like, okay, this doesn't all have to fall on my shoulders. There are people out there that can do just as good of a job, if not a much better job than me in a lot of areas of my business. And so I still like had that intense protection over, our manufacturing and everything that we did really. But I also had the knowledge, the realization that at that time that like, other people can do this. This isn't rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept it. I wanted to keep it in-house because I had witnessed so many inconsistencies in ingredients. Like with natural ingredients, nothing is uniform.
Yep.
And just so many little details that I would catch and that I could train people to catch, but I didn't necessarily trust a manufacturing team in another state that I didn't know, that I don't know their employees. I can't like train them. And so I just felt like the quality control was going to be much better if we could just continue doing this on our own. And that's kind of what we've done. I still, I know everybody on my team. I know their names. I talk to them. I trust them. And it's just a really good feeling, knowing everyone that touches your product and also being able to provide jobs in the community.
Yeah, I feel like what you embody is loving your customers through loving your product and the team to get it to your customers. Like you guys are impeccable with what you do. Like, and there's so many lessons in what you just said that took me 12 years of like quote unquote suffering to learn is what it felt like. You're like, Because I think all of us get to that point where it's like, I'm running this business, I got it going, and there's like this endowment to how we were doing things, and it's so easy to just keep doing it. But there's also this other side where you realize you're like, wow, we can have the same standards, the same attention to detail, the same level of love and care, but at a bigger scale if I remove myself and train people to see it like I see it. And the truth is that all of it's trainable, and I love that. And so when you made that transition, and I think this is something that comes up a lot, right? Like the first thing is you're like, okay, quality matters to me, and we'll talk about that in a minute, like how you come to product formulations and all that stuff, because you guys use the best of the best. But you're like, quality matters. And so that quality matters of what I put in. Oh, but with that quality comes its own unique set of circumstances. And I want to be able to control that circumstance to make sure my customers have the best experience. So I can't get it manufactured. I need to keep it in-house. And you're like, okay, but I can't quality control this all myself. There's no way with the amount of products that you make that you can do that. And so you're like, okay, so then I have to train somebody. And so when you get to that point, what I struggled with for a long time was, how do I train somebody to have my level of OCD? Was basically
Mm-hmm.
what it really boiled down to. And I was like,
Yeah.
how did you miss that? Like, I see this in my sleep and I get there, right? And I went through my
Yeah.
own circumstances, but I would love to hear kind of like how you take that, those things that are really important to you as the person who made this product and believes in this product and wants this experience. And how did you go about training somebody to catch that and see that in that process so you could buy your time back and really run this business?
Yeah. Great question. And I'm still like always just thinking through new ways to do this, but we have a recipe book, and it has all of our products formulas as well as like instructions on how to make them. And so our rule is like 2 people have to be present at all times, validating everything that's happening. So, whether that's like measuring ingredients or smelling ingredients before they're added to a batch, like there has to be 2 people present, and they each have to validate, like, this smells right, this looks right, this is the right amount of this ingredient that goes in the product. And once we implemented that, that gave me a lot of peace of mind, because
Mhm.
I trust everyone on our team, but everyone's human, and mistakes happen. I would make mistakes back when I was making the product. So just hiring, first off, like hiring great people and hiring people that do have that attention to detail and that care about the process and doing things right. And then also knowing that even with those types of people in place, mistakes will still happen. But if there's 2 people that are making the products together and validating every step, like there's a much less chance that mistakes are going to happen, and they still do.
Yeah.
But not that often.
Yeah, I think one of the things that happened to me, and I would actually love to hear your thoughts on this, right? Because like we bump, it's funny, guys, just so everybody knows, like Bethany and I go to the same coffee shop, right? She's always working, and I'm getting my coffee, and we bump into each other, and that's how we get updates. And I was like, I gotta have you on the podcast. And that's how we got here. But one of the things for me, Bethany, that comes up is like I have a team, and my team is spread throughout the world. One of them lives in Mexico, one of them lives in Texas, like one of them lives in Vietnam and speaks perfect English. And
Wow.
he's like my secret sauce. Like and Richard, if you're listening to this because you're writing this, you're amazing. Um, and one of the things that I hear you saying that I think is so important is that you basically document like what's important. And if this is important, how do we build the team or the container around it to make it important? But I think the biggest part is having grace when it doesn't work. And so if
Yeah.
it breaks or if it doesn't work, looking at it instead of like, I got to take it back, like what can we improve in the process? Like what can we add as a fail safe or a catch for that? And for me, that was probably the hardest part for me, because my natural response was, oh, it's broken, I'll just do it again. Or this one was
Mm-hmm.
missed. And I almost had to like seatbelt myself in and say like, you can't jump back in the water. Like you can't do it. Has that come up for you
Yeah.
at all in any of this?
Yeah, a lot. A lot. And I think that's like, it's like easier in the moment to just jump back in and like fix it.
Yeah.
But it long term, like you're doing yourself and your employees such a disservice by continuing to do that.
Yeah. No,
But it's hard.
yeah.
It's
And
really hard.
I know. I mean, I look at this and like I don't think I'll ever have it figured out. It's just this learning process to get there, and I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, I hear you speak and I can imagine what it's like. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the natural product space, like I've been in this space for a long time. It is the craziest space because when you use real ingredients, they expire. And
Mhm.
if they get too much heat or too much air or too much anything, they
Yeah.
can go bad. And literally, I'm going to put in the headline of this podcast, like, do your employees do the smell test? Like, that has to go in here. It's such a good, but I think it applies everywhere. Like, just making sure you're checking all the textures, you're checking all the scents, all the signs that we have in our business of like
Yeah.
whether it's our social media posts or whether it's our emails. And I'm assuming that when you get into we're done making the product but now it's time to market the product, we're looking at packaging. Do you do the same process with like your packaging and your labels? Like what is it like throughout that process? Like what's your QC? What do you guys pay attention to? What do you have your team looking for? Like what are kind of your non-negotiables with your team
Yeah.
before it leaves the door?
Yeah. So we have like multiple people working on kind of every step. Like you mentioned, labels. We have someone in-house that our designer, we actually use an agency, but we have someone in-house that works really closely with her on the labels. So they're kind of like going back and forth and sending different iterations and making tweaks. And then once they feel like it's good, then I'll look it over. And even something like that, you know, for a while I was like CC'd on all those emails back and forth. And I felt like, well, I have to know what's going on. But now it's like, okay, it's so much better just letting them handle like all the tweaks that they know need to happen. And then by the end of it, I maybe notice like one little thing, but I'm not like having to rack my brain and, you know, make notes of like these 13 things that are off.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's so nice. And then with our newsletters, I still do review those. Like every email we send out, I review it. But again, like up until recently, like even a few weeks ago, I was in on all those back and forth emails until the final version. And now like my team just creates a Dropbox folder for me and I review all the emails for the month in one sitting.
Mm.
So it's crazy. Like you think that you've, you know, evaluated things and like made good choices about what you're involved in and not involved in. But like, I'm sure even, I mean, for sure, like right now, there's several things that I could improve upon and could like remove myself from even more that I haven't thought of.
Yeah. Well, I
Because
think
things just change so fast.
of course, and I think the thing that's important is like as you get to the scale that you're at and you keep going, the amount of changes required increases exponentially daily. There's never a coasting period again. There's this constant iterative period, like every moment of
Yeah.
every day. Add a new customer, add a new employee, add a new product, need to buy your time back because that's the limited resource. And I think you're doing
Totally.
absolutely amazing. And it's actually really fun talking about this because like, I go through these same things and I see them all the
Yeah, I'm
time.
sure.
And I love like kind of opening the hood for people. And it's like one of my best friends, I'll never forget, they had a $600 million year. And he, for a year, was convinced he didn't ever want it again. He's like, I want to go back to where I was. Like, because the growth was so
Wow.
crazy that there was like no foundation. He's like, it almost
Yeah.
broke me. And it was a big lesson. And so I think it's falling in love that it's always going to be iterative and
Yeah.
having grace in what we do and how we do it. And so I want to know, what was the first product that you started manufacturing and how did you get there? Like you went from, because I remember, like I literally will never forget, I bumped into Paul at Ryan Brothers Coffee and we had known each other and I was like, what are you up to? He's like, I'm starting a chicken farm. And I was like, you're starting a what? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you're going from a Marine officer to a chicken farm. Okay, cool. And I'll never forget coming out to the farm and he taught me how to process meat and like we're out
Yeah.
there for
I
like
remember that.
hours, like literally like cleaning chickens and processing them and bagging them. And I was like, you're going to sell these for
Yeah.
how much money? And he's like, well, this is how much they cost. And the property is still like only 10 minutes away from me and I drive by it all the time. But
Oh,
what
so
was
cool.
what was that like for you when you were like, okay, you went from, okay, what goes into my body matters. Like this is really, really, really important. Did you start manufacturing products for
Mhm.
yourself? Is that how it started or what
Mhm.
kind of got you going with this?
Yes. Like you mentioned, the first step was really taking a look at what I was eating and changing that up, switching out my diet from processed foods to real foods. I think for a lot of people, that's kind of where it starts. And then
Mm-hmm.
you start to look at like, okay, so I was wrong about what foods I thought were healthy for my entire life. What else have I been lied to about?
Yeah.
And then that kind of led me to skincare. And growing up in high school, I had acne. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was at the time. I think I did more damage to my skin from like trying to treat it than versus if I would have just kind of like left it alone.
Yep.
Um, because the products I was using were so toxic, and none of them worked. They were always just a short-lived solution. And then I felt like they would cause these side effects that were like worse than my acne was to begin with. So I kind of always had that in the back of my mind of like, there has to be something more to this. And then food, like once I changed my diet, my skin improved a lot. And then when I started switching out my toxic products for just really simple natural ingredients in the beginning, I switched out like my moisturizer for just pure jojoba oil. That made a huge difference. So it was kind of this like slow progression of like, okay, and it was all like puzzle pieces coming together in my mind. Like, okay, food, that made such a difference. And swapping out, my whatever I was using at the time, Clinique, probably like moisturizer with jojoba oil made a huge difference. And it all just kind of started clicking. And then I was looking into deodorant, and I was blown away by just conventional deodorant and how many toxins it has, and just aluminum, and how that blocks our pores, and how we actually don't want that to happen because sweating is such an important way that our body detoxes. I was like shocked by everything I was finding on deodorant. So I was like, okay, this one is important. This one, like, I'm switching to just coconut oil and baking soda right away. And I started doing that. I would just, dip my finger in like a little jar of coconut oil, and then dip my finger in some baking soda and like rub it on every morning. And I wanted Jeff, my husband, to do the same thing. And he was not interested in what I was doing. So he was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I don't want to dip my fingers in something, but like if there's a stick form, I would do that. And so I was looking online for something like that. This was back in 2012. So there weren't a whole lot of natural options. And the ones that were out there, I feel like they were pretty expensive. And I already had a lot of these ingredients because I was kind of experimenting on my own. So I just figured I would try to make a natural stick form deodorant. And so I started experimenting, and, I started using different like versions on myself. I had Jeff try them. They were pretty rough in the beginning, but I was getting, I was like determined to create something that worked really well, and, create like a good experience, a good user experience with it. I was bringing them to CrossFit and having my friends try them. I was having my church friends try them, having my family try them, like everyone, and just gathering this feedback and making tweaks. And it was about a 2-year process of doing that before I actually launched the deodorant on the Primal Pastures website. And then from there, it kind of took off, not in a huge way, but for me, it felt huge at the time because I wasn't expecting people to really be interested, but they were, thankfully. And I eventually started a website just for Primally Pure, and that was in 2015.
Okay. And so when you look back, there's probably like some defining moments in this, right? Like, what would you say like are some of those top defining moments? And by the way, is deodorant still like one of the top SKUs for you?
Yeah, it's our bestseller.
Yeah. I love it. It makes me so happy to see it, which, by the way, I will email you after. I need to restock up before the move to Montana.
Oh yeah.
But and by the way, the charcoal deodorant, everybody check it out, use it. Men too. Everybody listening to us, men, women. If you men have beards, I'm not allowed to have a beard because wifey says no way. She has beard oil and stuff too. There's plenty of stuff for you there. And don't you even have like a cocktail named beard oils, right?
Yeah, there's a good story with that one actually.
I would love to hear it.
I wanted to make a beard oil, but it was always just kind of like on the back burner. And then I was in Mexico on the beach sipping a mojito. And I was like, a mojito's just lime and peppermint. Like, I could make a mojito product. And then I was thinking, okay, and I've always wanted a beard oil. That would work really well actually. And then like, what other drinks could I kind of replicate using essential oils? And then I thought, well, I could do an old fashioned, and old fashioned is like orange. And, I could add some other essential oils that kind of feel like masculine and to give it that like old fashioned profile. And so that's like my best product formula creation story ever.
I love it. I mean, just sipping a mojito down in Mexico, come up with a product. I love it. So when you look at back in the company and some of those defining moments, did you ever hit one of those moments where you're like, this is all over? Like where you're just like, it's done. I'm out. Like this is gonna crush us. Whether it was the Black Friday disaster that you had or something along those lines. Like what was that like? And then what did you take from that, like to keep going? Because I've hit moments before where I mean, you know this. I actually walked away from a company, and I was like, but I didn't walk away because the company was bad. I realized that I was no longer in it, and I couldn't pursue something that wasn't fun for me anymore. But I'm assuming there's been some of those moments where you're like, yep, this is it. Like everybody bought it. Oh my God, I have to launch a website, and that being a moment. And then tell me about this like Black Friday disaster. Like I actually really want to hear about this because you still use this for lesson learns coming forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was 2 years ago, I believe.
Okay.
And maybe it was 3 years ago. um, 2 or 3 years ago, we launched our new deodorant tubes, the ones that you'll see on our website now. Before that, we were using like these clear, we had to label them ourselves. They weren't as cool looking. So we were super pumped. We were launching these new deodorant tubes. We were launching our charcoal deodorant, which wasn't a product before then. And we had this whole like Black Friday campaign planned out of like launching our charcoal deodorant on Black Friday and like all these fun little, jingles of like charcoal and, playing on like the coal kind of aspect with Christmas and stockings and all that stuff. We had like ads scheduled. Our affiliates were kind of all plugged in and ready to push these promos. And it was so these tubes were our first like international packaging order. So we'd ordered them from overseas. We had never done that before. And then the tubes were going to arrive and we would, of course, like make the product and fill the tubes in-house. And we were confident that we would, nothing, there were going to be no hiccups. Like our supplier assured us that everything would happen like according to schedule. So we felt really good going into the planning and, leading up to it, the few weeks leading up to it, we were feeling really excited and great. And the tubes like hadn't arrived and we were like inching closer and closer to Black Friday weekend. The tubes we still didn't have them in our possession, but our supplier was really like encouraging us, like they, that we would have them. Come to find out, like Black Friday rolls around, we still don't have the tubes. We're still like trusting they're going to arrive any day. And then somehow we find out like they're still in the middle of the ocean somewhere, like still on a boat in the middle of the ocean. We had no idea. We thought like we would be getting them any day. So very like naive to think that everything would go according to plan in that process, but we had just never done it before. We didn't know. So we launched the promo on the deodorant tubes. We launched our brand new charcoal deodorant. It went crazy. We sold a lot of them, which was great, but we couldn't fill any of the orders and we had no idea when the tubes would actually arrive. So we're just kind of like twiddling our thumbs at first because we literally couldn't fill any of the orders. And then thankfully, like Cyber Monday, we had a different promo. So once that hit, we could start at least filling all the Cyber Monday orders. And, that took us several days to get through. And the whole time we're just like, gosh, I hope those tubes arrive. And they finally like arrived, but we had no idea what customs was like. And so, that I think they arrived like a week after Black Friday. And then there was like another week that they were in customs and being held up. And like, we were just like ready to drive to LA and like search through these box carts or whatever, however they store them and like find them and retrieve them and like bring them back. But, we obviously you can't do that. So we just had to wait and wait and wait. And finally the tubes arrived like 2 weeks after the fact. Customers were emailing us. We were just like, sending as nice of responses as possible, but it was hard because we didn't really have an estimated date of when we could ship them our orders, meaning that we would be able to somewhat soon. So once like all these tubes arrived on a huge semi we had no idea like that you needed to like how to get the boxes off of the semi. We didn't have like a loading dock or anything, or like a forklift or anything. So like our whole team, I think I had maybe 10 people on the team at the time. We just dropped what we were doing and we all like went out to the truck, and we had a few people that were standing in the truck and then several people that were like standing like on the floor, and we would like hand boxes. The people that were in the truck would hand boxes to the people that were on the floor, and it took us like 2 hours, but we got the truck unloaded. It was crazy.
So you guys didn't have a forklift. So literally you guys had to unpackage it in the back of the truck and then have an assembly line of people basically passing them in.
Exactly. Yep. And we all got a really good workout. We were all really sore the next day, but we got everything unloaded. And then we had to scramble to like make the deodorant and fill the tubes, which took even longer. But we did end up getting all the orders out in time for Christmas delivery. So
okay.
You know, it all worked out.
And I'm going to venture to say, knowing and watching how you guys communicate with customers and what they're like, there wasn't really too much of a fallout. You guys were really open. Everybody was probably well received.
Yeah. Once we just kind of, I mean, I don't think we shared, you know, every single detail, but once we, you know, we're always like really accommodating in our responses. And I think we we bumped everyone up to like a bigger size of deodorant, or gave a free lip balm, or we did something to kind of hopefully make up for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the customers were very understanding. Thankfully.
I think the lesson in that for anybody is stinky fish never get better with time. Just keep them informed. Don't just pretend that nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Because that would not go well.
For sure.
Oh man, I've dealt with air freight quite a few times. We've had containers lost at sea for our diaper bag backpacks. We've had them held and somehow lost in port. And I'm like, how do you lose it? And then 6 weeks later, like, we found it. And I was like, okay, thanks.
Such a nightmare.
I'm like, we were in the middle of an insurance claim when it was found, and we're like trying to deal with all that. It's so crazy.
Yeah, so many things can go wrong.
It does. And I think that that's a part of the game that we play, though. And every time I hear you talk about this, like when you're speaking about it, like you do what you can to mitigate it. You learn from it, you make an adjustment, and then you plan. And so I'm assuming now for Black Fridays or any promo or any big thing, have you increased your lead time? Like, how do you go about that now? Because, you know, no matter where you are in business, whether you have somebody co-packing for you, whether you're doing it yourself, whether you're shipping or manufacturing, we do, unless you really own everything, and none of us do because we're not making our raw ingredients for deodorant containers and doing all of that. We rely on all these other people. So what do you guys do now when you're thinking about a promo? Like, how far out do you do it? Like, what do you do in that plan? Because you got product, you got inventory, you got shipping, you got all of those fun things. What's that look like now?
Yeah. So, you know, in preparation for Black Friday, we start, you know, deciding on what we're going to do several months out. So I think like maybe 4 to 6 months out, we like to have decisions made by then. So it's kind of weird. Like you get done with it and you get into the new year, and then it's like, oh, we have to start thinking about that again already, because there's just so much that goes into it.
Yeah. I you know, what's funny is I feel the same way. Like we finish a Black Friday time of the year and I'm like, okay, next year. Like I always try to like get there as soon as possible just to even have like a semblance of a plan.
That's
and what
good.
other holidays, like when you guys look at this, I have 2 questions, but this one I want to know because, you know, when you look at what you do, I'm assuming you have to get ingredients from kind of all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because like you have to get one from somewhere and this oil from this one and a Palo Santo oil from this one. And so your logistics are probably mind blowing. Do you have one person that just handles all of that, or you guys have like a pretty dialed system to know like when stuff's coming in?
We have like really 3 people are kind of involved in that. So we have our herbalist, and she is mainly finding our sources.
Ah, got it.
So she finds the sources, and then we have someone who's our supply chain manager, and she does the ordering. And then our director of operations is kind of like a safety guard, and he's more like on the floor monitoring things in real time. And if things like if there's any surprises or things like are running low on it's unexpectedly, he'll usually like raise his hand and get involved, and he can kind of spot that stuff. But Mainly our supply chain manager is in charge of ordering and just kind of staying on top of our inventory and making sure that things are in stock for when we have, all the time, and especially when we have promos.
I can imagine what it was like when you were doing this like by yourself and getting all these raw ingredients and having to be like, where is it? Did it ship? Did I
Such a mess.
order more? And the quantities. I mean, we
Yeah.
we do it at High Speed Daddy. We only have one source, but we have to actually our lead time's 6 months, so we have to spread load inventory orders and like rotate lines of credit
Wow.
because we bootstrap the company. And so it's
Hard.
always like it's like a dance is what it feels like. It's just
Yeah,
this
it is.
dance. And so one of the
Yeah.
things that I want to ask you, because this comes up a lot, like one of the things that you've been non-compromising on is quality of ingredients, right? Like you have not compromised. And so you guys are all about non-toxicity, right? You're like what we put on our body is just as important as what goes into our body, right? But I get this question all the time. It's like, oh no, I have to make a cheaper product. I have to reduce my price. I have to do blah, blah, blah. And I love that you're a shining example that you can believe in something, you can stand for something, you can create it. And when you're consistent, it'll work. But like, what's that like for you? Because I mean, natural ingredients are not the common thing. They're not mass produced. It's here. And so have you ever had that come up? Have you ever got to that point where like, oh, I should have reduced the price? Or have you always kind of been from day one, this is what's important to me. We're sticking to it and I'm going to remain on that path until it works?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The second one for
Yeah,
sure.
I
um, you
figured.
know, yeah, and it's tempting sometimes. Just I think like one of the reasons we are a direct to consumer company, we don't do any retail, is because we want to keep our product as fresh as possible. And so, like you mentioned, shelf life earlier is
Hmm.
huge. So like thinking about the ingredients when they're sitting on the shelf as raw ingredients and how much time they're sitting, and then after the product is made, like how much time is that product sitting before it gets shipped out, and keeping everything in house in my mind was like really the best way to ensure that nothing is sitting around for longer than it should be. Nothing's like getting hot in a warehouse somewhere and being stored in an incorrect way.
Hmm.
So all of that stuff is a part of it. And if we were to use like ingredients that aren't totally natural and non-toxic, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
That's not as much of a concern. But I've never like let myself go too far down that path of like, what if we switch this or what, because it's just it's at the end of the day, like it's not going to be the most pure, efficacious product if we were to start making those compromises. And if anything, we've actually made our products more expensive over the years by finding like, just the top quality ingredients to use. And especially with bringing our herbalist on, she's amazing at just
Hmm.
sourcing out like amazing suppliers and finding suppliers that really take a lot of care with like their storing practices and their extraction methods and that kind of stuff, which at the end of the day, like does increase our price, but that has always been, quality has always been the most important thing to us. And that's never going to change.
And I love that. And do you think one of the secrets for that being effective as a company is that you pass that message along to your customers?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Like, how do you,
I hope so. I hope they, see that and trust that.
yeah, because I don't imagine, I mean, I don't imagine you get a lot of stuff about, price, but I feel like what you guys do an amazing job of is like educating people. Like, you have the product, right? And part of it is like somebody recognizing, like, oh, I need a more natural deodorant. And then you guys go really far in, okay, now that you understand this, so this is what's in it and this is why it's in it. Like, you guys are fully transparent. You believe in like really simple ingredients, keeping it as like streamlined as possible. But I feel like one of the secrets is the level of education that you go to
Yeah.
help people understand it, right? So what's that like for you? Because you like to write, or you do the research, you like to learn about all the ingredients. I'm assuming your herbalist is throwing stuff in your direction all the time. You're like, wait, that existed, and
Yeah.
I can do
Yeah.
that.
It's amazing.
And I feel like you guys pass that along to your customers, right? So we've talked a lot about kind of like behind the business, like pre-product, but now post-product and getting out there. Like, how do you go about formulating, like, how are we going to market this? How are we going to talk to people about this? Where are we going to put that out there? Like, what's that process been like for you? And what do you focus on with your team as like so important of like, this is what we have to do, or this is what we have to say?
Yeah. You nailed it. Education is key for us. So thanks for noticing that and for asking about it, because it's such like It has been really fun bringing our herbalist on, because now every time that we launch a product, she kind of creates a briefing about every ingredient in the product, like what it is, what it does, how it's sourced, where it comes from, its origins, any like cultural implications. She creates this like amazing briefing and then has a meeting with our marketing team where she really walks them through, every aspect of that product from start to finish. And it's just those meetings are always really exciting, because like the team is learning about these new products for the first time, and they're smelling them, and they're smelling like the essential oils separately that make that product. And they're also learning about everything that goes into it. So I think like they walk away feeling really inspired and excited. And then that translates to like the customer messaging that we create, and the blog posts that we create, and the newsletters, like the launch newsletters and Instagram stories and everything else that's being created.
Yeah, no, I think that that's one of the secrets. One of the things I say is nobody has a marketing problem. They have a relationship problem with themselves, their team, and their customers. But in that is like your team, like everybody that touches the outside world that is responsible for the message has a shared vision. They have a shared understanding. They have a shared experience. Like you're giving them all of the information required so that when they go respond to that comment on Instagram or write that email or create that ad, that they can basically talk about it just like everybody can and really translate that experience over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that that's, one of the big things is like education. Like it's only so far to make a product, right? And then we have to get people to understand why it's important, change their current belief systems, realize that they already have a routine. And I can imagine getting somebody from like Accutane and Proactive to like, you want me to rub what on my face, right? Like I'll never forget when Lindsay's like, you need to use this Salt Rock for deodorant. I'm like, what? I just rub like salt in my armpit? And then she's like, and it's going to take some time for it to like your deep body to detox. And I actually did it and it worked, but it burned a little bit for a while. But it was like, I was like, what do you mean? I don't just put Old Spice on like every day? Like I don't just use like that spray that like clogs my pores. And so, I think with everybody, education is always so important. And you guys do it really, really well. And I love that. By the way, like that gave me a ton of ideas, but I love that like you have that person, the herbalist, she's like, hey, here's the product, but here's what goes into the product. Here's what this ingredient does and why this does it. And how do you guys then take that brief? And I'm assuming your marketing team does it, but do they kind of take that same experience and pass that message on to your customers?
Yeah, for sure. So they'll use like word for word a lot of the stuff that she creates about the ingredients, and then that goes into the newsletters that we put out when we launch the product, and like also into the messaging that we send to our affiliates, and then that they translate that to their communities. So yeah, it's funny how it like trickles down the ladder, but it all starts with her and kind of like her vision and insights behind the products.
Yeah, so now I want to know just a few things. So one would be like when you look at this, right? You went from I'm doing this in my kitchen, I'm watching Breaking Bad while labeling these containers, right? Like I'm binging here to like now I have a team of 40 people. I'm really crystal clear on what matters, what lane we're staying in, how we're never compromising ingredients. Now I have 40 people, sometime bringing on temps, right? What do you feel like is your biggest challenge when it comes to running like a consumer focused like CPG brand?
I think I say this now because this has been probably just in the last several months my biggest challenge, but like hiring the right people and not falling into the trap of like, okay, we need this position and panicking and like filling it with the wrong person, because that just causes way more problems in the end. But yeah, just like being patient and being so clear about who you're looking for and what type of qualities they should have and what type of experience they should have, and not settling. And like I think it's frustrating. The more higher level hires, the more, you know what I mean, the more experienced type of hires that you need to start making, like they take longer. Those positions take longer to fill. And it's hard sometimes to be patient when you feel like, there's so much that needs to be done. And I've fallen into the trap before of just, moving too quickly versus just knowing like, okay, I'm going to be more involved with this for a little while longer, because that's a better option than handing this off to somebody who isn't the best person for the job.
Yeah, and when you get into that point, right? Like, hiring a social media poster versus hiring like a CMO or a COO or, a director of ingredients or operations is different. What do you look for when you're looking at that, like to hire somebody in? Do you look at like the culture, their history? Like I'm assuming it's people fit, but like how do you go about that to make sure that you bring the right person in, not necessarily just the right skill set?
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of like refining that process. And
Mm,
I just kind of created this guide because before it was really loosely structured. We would, of course, have interviews and conversations, but there was no like real structure to it. So I'm hoping to change that. But with this guide, I really lay out like what our company culture is, what type of person we're looking for, what type of characteristics they should have. Like, I really want people that care about health and wellness. I think that is so important because that's what we do. That's like at the heart of everything we do is wanting people to be well and not wanting them to have to sacrifice their health for how their skin looks. And so I really want people that can get behind that mission. And so I really lay that out in this guide, and then also like ask really specific questions and that I want people to like fill out and send back to us just to kind of weed out anyone that maybe is kind of interested in applying, but not like doesn't really care, like isn't really interested in investing the
mhm.
time into the process. I'm hoping that by creating like a more rigorous interview process that will really like nail down the type of people that are applying.
Yeah, I love it. No, I think, like it's really interesting. Like I feel like when I look at your brand from the outside, I see the level of attentiveness and care that's gone into the culture. Like more than even just the product. Like in the beginning, you're making the product, you are putting your heart and soul into it. It's important to you. But not only did you teach people how to make the product and keep the same values, I feel like you brought people in that believe and feel all the same way that you do. So it's like this superpower of infusion of like values into your product and brand. It's beautiful. Like it really, really is. No, it really is. So what are you most excited about in like the next like 12 to 24 months? Like I know you have big visions and big plans and probably like world domination in skincare and disrupting the industry, but like what gets you really lit up to like get up every day? I know you love what you do. I know what you love the people, but like what do you get so excited about and like what's exciting for you in like the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I am fired up about some of the products that we have on our radar to launch in 2020 and or sorry, 2021 and 2022. Really excited about some of those. We're launching a new deodorant scent that we're going to have our customers kind of be a part of and like vote on and that kind of thing. So really excited to do that and to make it customer driven. Several additional face products that we're coming out with just to better like meet people at their skin state. We call them skin states, not skin types, because their skin is always changing. But like several products that we're launching just to like better accommodate specific skin needs. So excited for that. And then I'm really just looking forward to creating more content. And, like we talked about, education is such a big part of our brand, and especially with natural products. There's just a lot of things that people like need to be aware of when they're making the swap, and even educating people on like the why behind why they should make those changes is so impactful. So it's always been a big part of our brand, but I'm excited to focus on it like even more so. And then I'm excited for our spa to reopen,
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah, yeah.
in January.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh, you have a spa too, and I was like, that's a whole different episode and a whole
Yes.
different unique set of challenges and lessons. And so I got to know what's your favorite product and what's your husband's favorite product.
Ooh. Okay. His favorite product, I'm going to guess, is the charcoal deodorant. I'm
Hmm.
always trying to get him to have like a routine and use, a facial, like a cleansing oil and a toner and like a moisturizer. And he's never consistent with it, but he always wears the charcoal deodorant every day. So I'm going to guess that that's his favorite product. Mine deodorant holds like the most special place in my
Hmm.
heart because it's my first product and it's our bestseller and all that. But if I had to like choose one
Hmm.
to have forever, I would probably choose our everything spray because It's so multifunctional. It makes a great underarm awesome tones or scrapes or things like that. Customers are always telling us of like new ways they've found to use it. So that would be mine.
I love it. And then what are you currently reading?
Ooh, okay, 3 books I'm in the middle of. One is High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard. One is How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen, because I have a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old that I'm trying to get them to listen to me. And then I'm reading The Carnivore Code by Paul Saladino.
I love it. I love it. I'm actually, what's that one? Because I have a 4-year-old. What's that one? How to Talk So Little Kids Listen?
Yes, it's so good.
I'm gonna
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna add that to my list right now, because I feel like he talks over me and around me and is smarter than me. So I feel like he doesn't listen because he's more intelligent than me. That's what I feel like my 4-year-old is right now. And then if you could have only one meal, like what would be your favorite food? Like end of the day, like no matter what, what's your default favorite food?
I love these questions. Okay, the meal that I always dream about is like ceviche with plantains. And like I always get that anytime I go to anywhere tropical. Yeah, like Mexico, Costa Rica, I'm always getting like ceviche with plantains. That would be my favorite.
Yeah, I feel like mine's always gonna be chocolate chip pancakes. Like I can't get off of it. It doesn't go away. Yeah, with like extra chocolate chips and like a butter pecan syrup. I can always change the syrup, but like the chocolate chip pancakes, they're like my jam.
So good.
They're my jam. Okay, cool. So first off, thank you. I'll just publicly say this. Thank you for doing it the right way. Thank you for sticking to your guns and having your values and putting in the work and like being unaffected by the world and be like, this is what I'm going to do. Like you are a shining example of like how to do business and entrepreneurship and impact. And so like, I want to thank you while everybody's listening, because I think you're a shining example of doing it. So thank you. Number two, thank you for being here. Just so everybody knows, my favorite products, hands down, I use the flower bath all the time. Lindsay gets pissed at me because it disappears. And she's like, where did it go? I'm like, sorry, I used it. We have our 4-year-old that uses it, and he asked for flowers in his bath. So he takes an Epsom salt bath.
That's amazing.
But I love that. And then I just saw the Palo Santo spray, and it literally is one of my favorite scents. I literally have Palo Santo on my desk right now. And so nice. I'm going to get that. And so for everybody listening, the best place to find you is Primarily Pure, right? On the website. Yep. Hit up the Instagram for the beautiful aesthetics. But I have a question that I'm going to let you leave with and end with. And so everybody listening, big spectrum of life, big spectrum of entrepreneurs, business owners, or maybe not. Maybe you're just like this random person that found my Crazy Mind of George podcast. But if you could leave them with one thing, one thought, one takeaway that you could imprint on their brain permanently that you would want them to carry into their life for the next 12 months or beyond, what would that be?
I think I would just encourage everyone to like never stop learning. One thing I've realized is like the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. And there have been so many times where I've just been frustrated or feel like I'm hitting a wall. And, I always come back to like, okay, how can I give myself like the time and carve out the time either in the morning or like at the lunch hour or whatever to just, flip on a podcast or read a book or like read the Bible or whatnot, anything that's going to maybe like create a light bulb moment for me or create, make something clear that wasn't clear before. I think it's easy to just get stuck in our heads a lot of the times and kind of just like go on this, rabbit hole and just feel kind of stuck. But for me, learning from people that have done this before and just looking outside of myself a lot of times, that's something will like click in me. And that's how I'm able to kind of get through whatever I'm struggling with at the moment.
I love it. I love it. I'm not gonna taint that one at all. I'm gonna leave that for everybody listening. That's where we're gonna end. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Mind of George Show. Do not forget to take an Epsom salt bath, spray yourself with Palo Santo oil, get a charcoal deodorant, or get your husband to have a skincare routine by toning his face. But there's so much in here. I would highly recommend listening to this one again. Please go check out Bethany. And I say this, you guys know I talk about companies and brands very openly and honestly. If you want an example of what brand congruency looks like, how to stick to your guns and values, how to lead with education, how to stay connected to your customers, how to get a whole team and culture to look at it, go check out primallypure.com. And until the next episode, when you either see me again or hear me in your earballs, remember that relationships always beat algorithms. Now let's cue the outro.